Alright, everybody, today's lesson is going to be on theorists. There are lots and lots of theorists when it comes to psychology and comes to child development and really just human development in general. But we are going to talk about just three of them. These ones are pretty big when it comes to actual like child development, whereas other theorists focus more on human development, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to teach you about these three theorists, and then that's going to finish out our Unit 1, and then we will be beginning Unit 2 next week. So we were going to do a little song and dance in class. We were going to do the Hokey Pokey together. Maybe we'll do it when I get back. I don't know. We got tons of stuff going on in Unit 2, which are fun, so we'll just save this for another time, but it was just going to be a fun little activity we did. Okay, so our first theorist we're going to talk about, his name is Erikson, and he came up with the theory of psychosocial development, okay? And there are 8 stages in his theory, and they go from birth to adulthood. However, because this is child development, we are not learning all of his stages. You would learn more of the stages of development if you were taking like psychology with Mrs. Guyman or human development with Mrs. Lucas. But because we're child development, we're only going to go through the first 5 years, which are the first 3 stages of his 8 stages of psychosocial development. The way that I remember Erikson, he had the 8 stages of psychosocial development. And if you write out the words E. Erikson, that has 8 letters in it. And so E. Erikson, his first initial and his last name together, have 8 letters, and he came up with the 8 stages of psychosocial development. Like I said, it goes from birth to adulthood, but we are only going to cover the first 3. And since this is child development. So if you look on the left, you see that he has a chart, okay? And this is where we basically complete certain tasks and we develop certain virtues at these different ages if we are able to complete this task. And so, like, as an infant to 18 months, what they are learning to do most is they're learning who to trust and who not to trust and how to gain that trust. And so they develop the virtue of hope. Whereas 18 to 3 years, they learn about autonomy, which autonomy just means like basically independence and being able to make decisions and choose things. So autonomy versus shame and doubt. And they develop the virtue of will. And then from 3 to 5 years, they take on the task of initiative versus guilt, and they develop the virtue of purpose. So those are really important stages when it comes to our psychosocial development. So our infant stage is trust versus mistrust. Basically what happens in this stage is if needs are dependently met, infants develop a sense of basic trust. It's human nature. If their needs are met, they will trust you. Your toddler stage, is going to be from about 2 to 3, like 18 months to 3, and that's autonomy versus shame and doubt. Toddlers learn to exercise the will and do things for themselves, or they start to doubt their abilities. And then the preschool age, which is from 3 to 5, is initiative versus guilt. And preschoolers learn to initiate tasks and carry out plans, or they feel guilty about efforts to be independent. So let's talk about trust versus mistrust real quick. This is the first stage in Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. This stage begins at birth and lasts through 1 year of age, and infants learn to trust that their caregivers will meet their basic needs. If these needs are not consistently met, mistrust, suspicion, and anxiety may develop. The major question that children are asking is, can I trust the people around me? They gain the basic virtue of hope, and a very important event in this stage is feeding, because that's how children learn to trust mostly, is because that's the need that they have the most. And when they cry because they're hungry, they're letting you know they're hungry. And if you respond to that by feeding them, that teaches them that they can trust you to take care of that need. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. This stage occurs between the ages of 18 months to around 2 to 3 years. According to Erikson, children at this stage are focused on developing a greater sense of self-control. You will notice that children are, when they get in this stage, they are very, very independent. They like to do things on their own. They like to learn how to do things, and they get really angry if you do it for them because they want to show that they know how to do it. A major question is, can I do things myself, or am I reliant on the help of others? The basic virtue that they gain is will, and an important event is toilet training, because it's the very first thing that they do that they have total control over. It takes a while for them to obviously get a hang of it. Potty training can be super easy for some kids. It can be a nightmare for other kids. Just kind of depends. But once children learn how to potty train, on how to go to the bathroom and the toilet, it's a huge step towards autonomy versus shame and doubt. And then there's a super cute video that I'm going to show you guys, but whenever I click on external videos when I'm recording lessons, for some reason it stops the video. So I'm just going to put the link in Canvas that you can click on and watch. Okay, and then we have initiative versus guilt. This stage occurs during the preschool years, between the ages of 3 and 5. During the initiative versus guilt stage, children begin to assert their power and control over the world through directing play and other social interaction. The major question is, am I good or bad? They develop the basic virtue of purpose, and an important event for them is exploration and play. Children learn through exploring and they learn through play. So you need to make sure you provide those opportunities for children to just play and learn things. And it's amazing to watch how much kids learn and how much they pick up on. You would be surprised at how observant children are and how many things they copy that their parents or their caregivers do. And it's really, really fascinating to watch. Okay, so Jean Piaget's cognitive development theory is our next one. He's our next theorist. His last name is spelled like Piaget, but it is a French name and it's pronounced Piaget, so practice that. And he is responsible for the cognitive development theory, meaning he works on the brain and your cognitive development, whereas Erikson is more about your psychosocial, which is like your emotions and your feelings and things like that, whereas Jean Piaget is all about the brain and your cognitive development. So there are 4 stages of cognitive development. The way that I remember this is if you take the last 3 letters of Piaget's last name, it spells get, and I always think of Get Smart, like the movie, and that reminds me that Piaget is all about your cognitive development, your brain development, which is kind of how smart you are, okay? So that's how I always remember Piaget's, and they go from birth to adulthood, but we're only going over the first 2 stages, because once again, this is child development. You would go further into his theory in, like I said, Mrs. Guyman's psychology class or Mrs. Lucas's human development class. Okay, so we're going to go over the sensory motor stage and the pre-operational stage. So infants are in the sensory motor stage. This is basically from ages from 0 to 2. And this is where their coordination of senses with motor response, and they have sensory curiosity about the world. Language used for demands and cataloging and object permanence is developed. I'll talk about that in a little bit more depth. And then toddlers are in the sensory motor, and at pre-operational stages, they start to begin to use more symbolic thinking, use of proper syntax and grammar to express full concepts. Imagination is really strong. They do have a hard time with abstract thoughts, and they start to learn conservation. Preschoolers are also in the pre-operational stage. So let's talk about the sensory motor stage from ages 0 to 2. This is when the child relies on seeing, touching, sucking, feeling, and using their senses to learn things about themselves and the environment. If you notice, children, especially babies, put absolutely everything in their mouth. It's how they learn. So be aware of that when you have little children around, because a lot of choking hazards happen a lot, and it's really scary. So make sure that you are aware that children, babies, put everything in their mouths. Object permanence is the awareness that an object continues to exist even when it's not in view. In young infants, when a toy is covered by a piece of paper, the infant immediately stops and appears to lose interest in the toy. And that means the child has not yet mastered object permanence. In older infants, when the toy is covered with a pillow or a piece of paper, a sheet, whatever, or it's hidden, the child will actively search for that object when they have mastered object permanence, because they understand that just because the object is not in view, it's still there. And that's object permanence. It continues to exist even when it's out of sight. When they do not have object permanence, once you remove it from sight, it's out of mind and they don't remember that it's there. After a child has mastered the concept of object permanence, the emergence of directed groping begins to take place. I always thought that was kind of a weird term, but that's what it's called. With directed groping, the child begins to perform motor experiments in order to see what will happen. So a child learns to use new means to achieve an end. The child discovers he can pull objects toward himself with the aid of a stick or a string, or tilt objects to get them through the bars of the playpen. They start to learn that if they manipulate something, they're going to get a result. Okay? Whereas if they do not have directed groping, a child, let's say, was in his playpen and they had a toy on the ground and they tried to pull it through the playpen, and when it wouldn't fit, they would just give up. Instead, when they have directed groping, they know, I can make this fit, let me just maneuver it a little bit, and that would be an example of directed groping. Pre-operational is from ages 2 to 7. And during the pre-operational stage, children also become increasingly adept to using symbols, as evidenced by increasing in playing and pretending. You can easily tell what these two kids are playing. They're playing pirates and they're acting like pirates, and you can tell based on what items they're using for their imagination. For example, a child can use an object to represent something else, such as pretending a broom is a horse. It's a very common thing that they do. Role-playing also becomes important. Children often play the roles of mommy and daddy, doctor, and many other characters. And then we have our third theorist. This is Abraham Maslow, and he created Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. This is really, really this is probably one of my favorite theories, and the one that I like to learn about the most, because I think that it's just cool and I really like it. So basically what the Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs is you have this pyramid, okay, and you start at the bottom, and you cannot move forward until you have the previous area of the pyramid. So the very first thing that you need is you need to have your physiological needs met. You need to be physiologically alive. So you need air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, the things that keep you alive. Okay? If you don't have those things, you're not even a living person. Okay? And so you need your physiological needs met. Okay? Once your physiological needs are met, so you're alive, you're breathing, you have shelter, you're sleeping, you have food, you move into the next part of his pyramid, which is your safety needs. This is where you have personal security, you have employment security, you have resources, health, property, you have the things that keep you safe. And so you are now alive. You have the things that keep you safe. So now that you're alive and you're safe, you can move to the next stage in the pyramid, which is where you can begin to feel love and belonging. This is when your friendship and your intimacy and your family and sense of connection is really strong. You cannot have love and belonging if you don't feel safe. And you cannot feel safe if you aren't alive. Once you have you're alive, you feel safe, you have love and belonging in your life, you can then move on to your esteem needs, which is where you learn about respect, self-esteem, self-concept, status, recognition, strength, freedom. You cannot experience self-esteem or self-respect until you have love and belonging. You cannot experience love and belonging until you feel safe. You cannot feel safe until you are alive. Once you have your esteem, you move on to self-actualization, and this is where you desire to become the most that one can be. This is where you are the best of the best. You know who you are, you know what you believe in, you know what you don't believe in. You have opinions, you have belief systems, you have morals. You have all these things that make you who you are, okay? So, you cannot have self-actualization until you have esteem. You cannot have esteem until you have love and belonging. You cannot have love and belonging until you feel safe, and you cannot feel safe until you're alive. That is Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, and I love it. I find it fascinating. Okay, if you have not finished your children's story, I need you to make sure you finish that and submit it. And then you are taking your Unit 1 test after this lesson. Bye!